Right, so welcome. Today, Lauren, Christine, and I are going to be talking about sun transits 29 and 59. So we are going to explore around, see what we can learn and what we can play with over the next two periods of 5.5 days. And we're coming out of sun transit 4. Just before we got on, we were talking about um, sort of how things are happening for people. And so that we're talking about uncertainty being an aspect of that transit. And I've been feeling like I've been living in that fully, getting ready to move. And that it's like the ground keeps shifting. And so I'm just being in it and recognizing I picked a lovely time to do this.
Uh, as I was listening to Lois, I just kind of glanced at the calendar, and I don't know why I didn't see this as part of my observations this week. So I'm carefully noting on not knowing, but then looking at the gene keys and the shadow being intolerance. And I was going to share how grumpy I've been the last 2 days, and really like just don't bump up against me and leave me. It's really a sense of leave me alone. Just everybody leave me alone. Are either of you experiencing that?
I'm not feeling that so much, but I had a very gate four experience earlier in the week where I have this show that I'm doing this weekend, and it's a big show. It's 3 days. It's a lot, and I've known about it for a long time. And the woman who's running it, I have a good relationship with. But earlier in the week, I was like, like she had told me early in the week, and I didn't realize this, that I needed to be set up by Wednesday, which the show is like, I don't know, an hour and a half away from where I live. And I was like, well, it takes me like an hour to set up. The show is on Friday. Can't I just set up on Friday? And so I essentially texted her that. I'm like, hey, can I just do this on Friday? At which point she was like, maybe you don't really want to be part of the show. And I was like, oh, that really wasn't what I was saying. Right? But it was interesting because I was super intolerant of this thing. Like, this is like this rule for no particular reason, right? And then when she texted me back, she was like, look, I need people set up by Wednesday because I do all this social media stuff and all, several different reasons. At which point, my intolerance shifted into understanding,
Sure.
which is this or right gift, which is like, oh, of course, like I'm in my own head. I'm being intolerant of her rules because I'm completely not understanding what it is she needs those rules for, right? And at which point I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, here we go, right? Like I was being stupidly intolerant. Once I understood something, I was like, cool. And then I had to really repair that relationship. I had to go back and write an email. I was like, look, I'm super sorry. Like, I understand now what you're talking about. I understand what I was asking as being, and then it was just like forgiveness between us, right? Because she was kind of pissed at me, and I was kind of like, oof, I screwed up here. And then we had to like repair it. So it was kind of that whole like gene key arc, you know.
Wow, just in the first 2 days. You just dove right into that one.
Yeah. And isn't it interesting? It's like it's like coming out of that and her questioning your commitment and us moving into gate 29.
Yeah.
No, that's true. I didn't even thought about that. That's amazing. Yeah, so here we are getting close to gate 29. We're not quite there yet as we record, but um so gate 4 was this, ajna head energy. It was collective. We're shifting now for these next two gates into this sacral life force energy space, right? And so we're getting really into this where our gut instinct comes from, right? And so I think these next 2 weeks, especially like gate 29 is the gate of saying yes. That's literally its name. And there is this real energy to say yes to life, right? This is the sacral life force energy. Um, and it's connected, through the channel that it's part of through to the identity center, right? So it's saying yes to life through this energy of our higher knowing. And so I think that this next few days will be a really great time to play around with our um, our commitment to life, right? Like this is the gene key piece of it. Like the gift is commitment. And so I don't know. I just think it's interesting, right? We're going to move from this headspace that we've been in, very mental energy, back into this very grounded center of us. And it might be interesting to note that and see if we can feel that shift in energy that the sun is bringing us over the next few days.
Well, there's also, like with this is saying yes to life, and it's like just looking at that through the Gene Keys perspective. There's the what are you saying yes to? What are you saying yes on behalf of? Because like there's so many of us that say yes because we don't want to say no. And then we lose that, we don't have the commitment to what it is that we've said yes to. And we've just all been in situations where either we fell through or we went and did something that we didn't really want to do. And so it seems like really, I don't know whether you're like we're looking, this is sacral. So I mean, it's like, can we tap into our sacral? But not everybody finds that easy. So just maybe looking at our values. I mean, if you're not feeling it, to think, what value am I supporting if I'm saying yes?
It's interesting. This is a sacral energy because in the I Ching, they're referencing the heart often in this. And is there a specific connection there, Christine? No.
No, it isn't. It is an experiential energy, though. It is on this, it's run by the solar plexus energy, this desire to have new experiences. This is the channel of discovery, right? So in some ways there I can see some heart energy in that, but it isn't technically from a human design standpoint directly connected to the heart.
Yeah. Well, in reading Hilary Barrett's work, the question that popped for me most in her translations was, what are you sure of in your heart when nothing else is sure? And so that's another way of putting what are you willing to commit to? I think this is so poignant right now because the distractions are so ridiculously loud. And, should I be drawn here or there or here? But what is it our heart is really asking us? And what are we sure of when everything else falls away? Because it's going to. So I think this is great practice. This is definitely one of those weeks where we get to practice the future, and dig down into what is that thing for us.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, the gene key, the shadow is half-heartedness, right? So in that way, that I can definitely see this heart aspect. And I think I've read this gene key several times, and the thing that always sticks out for me for whatever reason, and then I promptly forget it, is this idea that 99% committed is not committed.
Right.
Right? Like Richard talks about that, and I was like, oh my God, that is, he's like, it doesn't matter if you're 1% committed or 99% committed. If you're not 100% committed, you're not committed. And this half-heartedness energy is super, like, I'm like, oh yeah, right? And we all know this, right? There's so much of our life that we half-heartedly do whatever it is that is required of us, right? What feels like we need to do. And so I really wonder, and again, things we've said yes to, right? In this particular, gate energy, we say yes to a lot of things that we don't really want to be doing, that aren't really lighting us up, that aren't speaking to our heart, aren't really speaking from our true life force energy, right? And so noticing that, especially this next few days, I think can be really helpful because yeah, half-hearted is just a total waste of our energy.
Yeah. Well, think too here, because the idea of perseverance and that comes up related to this sun transit, and the in the I Ching that's called the Abysmal,
Mhm.
which sounds horrible, doesn't it? But it got me thinking about Joseph Campbell's work in The Hero's Journey, and the when something really matters to us is that the going through what you need to go through to get to the other side. And that, like, how, like, the difficulties that one will find along that path, which made me think of like Star Wars and Luke Skywalker going underground to, facing whatever he didn't know, was going to show up, but and coming out the other side as the hero. But it, it's like this commitment to what comes from the heart or from the sacral. I mean, then there's the value in actually going through all of that. But then there are people who commit to something and they do it even though their heart isn't in it.
Mm.
Yeah. Or they break off. And then we've seen so much of this, like you see with people in relationships where they keep going through another difficult relationship or another difficult job. And somehow if they change the relationship or the job, it'll all be better. And as a friend of mine said, well, you have to take yourself along. So,
Yeah.
maybe you're the issue. You're going to find the same thing if you haven't dealt with this cycle.
So I'm hearing the theme of alignment there. It's really bringing what we're doing into alignment with what we feel is important. And the extract I was thinking about for this is actually sea buckthorn. And the oracle message that I received for regarding sea buckthorn is that it sets the tone for how we live our days and how we live our lives. And that also brings me back to your thinking of Joseph Campbell. I mean, this is the path we're on. And it's interesting. My husband and I were just talking about the hero's journey this morning. And you can't go on your hero's journey unless you're committed. I mean, it's just not going to work. And so I think considering sea buckthorn here, I think sea buckthorn does a couple things. One is it increases clarity, and it does actually help eyesight so that you can see. If you can't see what it is that you're really sure of, I think this could be really helpful. But I love this feeling of it setting the tone and the rhythm for us. And it feels to me that's what we really need during this particular transit is feeling into what is our rhythm, what is our pace, what is our commitment to living this way.
Yeah, that's interesting, I think, because it dovetails into the dilemma that Richard Rudd talks about of this gene key, which is postponement,
Mhm.
right? And this idea that we aren't actually living our life, right? We're putting off things. We're putting off commitment, essentially, right? We're not committing. We're not digging in deep. Deepness being this hexagram that you talked about, Lois. Like the abysmal is actually about the abyss, right? The depth, the deep within the deep is actually what this hexagram is. It's water over water, right? And so this deepness of life that we are so afraid of, I think, is very much what comes up for us in this gene key, right? Like we know that life is so deep, and yet we don't really want to dive down into it because it's also super scary, right? And so we postpone. We swim at the top. We just, we tread water, right? And so I think it's just a really interesting energy, to just notice if we are postponing things, if we are not, wanting to see things clearly, or if we aren't, are we seeing things clearly? Maybe that's a good question, right, for this time. And maybe sea buckthorn would be the perfect, helper to that.
Christine, I just have to add, so sea buckthorn has a super deep taproot that goes down, and it makes it very difficult to transplant. Actually, any tree or shrub with a deep taproot does that, but it goes down and mines to what is really needed, what's essential to bring life and vitality.
Yeah. It's in this deep dive. Breen Magnuson connects the cormorant to this particular.
Mm.
and it's like she was talking about how like cormorants don't have the sort of waterproof feathers that other birds have, so they can dive very, very deep. And so it's like the thing going in that deep dive and then the value of what you get when you get down to the bottom. And even though it's scary, is actually, jumping in.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. It reminds me of a lot of the origin stories from many Native American tribes, right? Of Sky Woman falling from the sky, but there was no land for her. And so all the animals would get together, they got together to try to bring up land to make an island for her, right? And how all the various animals dove so deep, time and time again. Some of them didn't make it even because they just dove too deep trying to make this happen. Um, so yeah, I don't know what necessarily came up for me about that, but this thing about depth, right? Like it is, and I think again, like me, I'm always bringing it back around to the collective. That's my design. I think that we are, as a collective, recognizing this surface thing that we've been doing for a long time as being not particularly fulfilling and postponing a lot of joy and a lot of understanding and connection that I don't think are really willing to postpone any longer. So I feel like this little 29 gate 29 energy is going to be a nice little precursor to what's coming up for us very quickly as a planet. And I'll also say, just as a side note, we're here looking at the sun and what it's doing, and this is what, the sun is in gate 29 from August 17th to the 21st, but also in the background, August 17th to the 19th, because of where Pluto is in the sky and where our Earth position is, the channel of recognition, which is a channel that connects the root center to the emotional solar plexus, will be on for the entire planet. So there will be 2 or 3 days where this channel of recognition, which is it's a very emotional channel. It has this emotional energy. It has big emotions, and it's got this kind of fantasy, dreamy kind of quality, right? Where big ideas really may come to the surface for us individually or for the collective. And so I just note that because there's this pressure to find excitement. There's pressure for wanting more and better experiences. And just to recognize that it may be here for us and to wait for some clarity, like there may be physical pressure to want to get up and do something new. But just give it a moment, right? Just take a moment and recognize the energy for what it is. Don't necessarily act on it immediately and watch it out in the world. I suspect we'll be seeing it out in the world, some push for big new experiences that I don't know, we may have been dreaming about for a while, and there's just some real energy around actually actualizing it this next few days.
Well, in your example too, Sky Woman it kind of shows how important it's like we're not alone, or don't think like in this. So looking at where are our communities around what it is we want to have happen.
That's really true. This is a collective gate too, right? This is again out there sharing, like what is it we can share with one another, um, and what is it important for us as a collective to say yes to or not, right? Also, saying no is a very big part of this. Sometimes we should just
It's funny you said that because the mediator, William Ury, worked so hard about getting to yes. And then sort of later in his career, he recognized that we actually needed to learn how to say no effectively and be able to save relationships. So it's like, it's exactly what you were just saying.
I love that. I didn't know that. I didn't know the guy that wrote Getting to Yes. Decided that maybe we should get to know often too. That's great. All right. So any other stuff about 29 that's come up for either of you? Okay. So after we move through gate 29, our next gate is gate 59, also a sacral gate in the body graph. It's actually the gate of sexuality, and the hexagram is dispersion. And so gate 59 is really a very it's all about breaking down barriers, right? Like this is part of a channel that we call an aura busting channel, right? People with this energy very often can make intimate connections very quickly, right? People trust them, they feel trustworthy in the world, they can be friendly with people very, quickly. Salesmen often have this kind of an energy where people are like, "Ooh, I really feel like I know that guy." And it is here to, to promote, to promote the genetic, mutation of humanity, right? This ability to break down barriers and to be with one another in all sorts of creative ways, is super important to the continuation of the species. And so when we're in this energy, I think about, from August 22nd to the 27th, just noticing that, right? Like noticing if there is extra energy in your life for being in relationship, for making new connections that you might not have made before, for working, this breaking down barriers thing is also really powerful. Are there places where you have felt outside or felt like you can't make an inroad somewhere? Like, will this energy bring more support for finding new ways and new inroads into connection? Um, yeah, it's also a tribal energy. We haven't really had much of that in the last few weeks. So this is also very much about like this close in energy, like who, friends, family. There's this idea about who's in your tribe, who's out of your tribe. And it is important to just focus or just to understand that it could also bring up these kinds of issues in the close in relationships that you have too.
It was in as you brought up the sexuality aspect, and Richard Rudd really sort of goes into that quite deeply. But there's dispersion being the name of the hexagram, and that need to disperse one's genetic,
Mm.
like the lineage, but when he was talking about it, he's like, there's this fear-based in aspect of it, sort of in the growing of humanity. And he talked about how that was necessary for there to be differences amongst people, or from his perspective, we would have failed as a species. And I found that really interesting because like now in the world, it's causing us so many problems. All this, I'm different from you. Uh, you're not part of my group, part of my tribe. And so it feels like we're making a shift. It's even in like where we see so many um, multiracial marriages and children, and how that's shifting and it's changing. Like there's people like me who have blue eyes. There aren't going to be people that with blue eyes in the future because it's a recessive gene and it will disappear. And yet, you know, maybe there will be less tension in the world as a result of that.
Yeah, I'm going to come at this from a little different angle, like I usually do. But I love this idea of connection and intimacy as an overall theme, and because that even is clear in Hilary Barrett's work. And but her question she's asking, because I think it is due to the fact that the opposite of intimacy is rigidity. And when we put up barriers and walls between ourselves. So our question is, how and where can you be less rigid? And to be intimate, we have to be incredibly vulnerable, and we have to make ourselves open to be penetrated by others' energy, others' feelings, emotions. And so I'm really thinking about mistletoe. And mistletoe penetrates the bark of a tree and plants itself there. And at first, the tree feels very threatened by mistletoe, and it wants to put it off. But with time, they develop this intimate, symbiotic relationship in it, but it takes a little time. And I'm wondering how useful that might be during this period. I'm super curious about it. I would like to try it. It's actually a tonic for the autonomic nervous system. So it's improving our and heightening our awareness and our ability to function in a way where we can feel safer in a broader spectrum of places and with more people. So it's improving our quality of feeling safe, which would be needed then if we were going to increase our intimate relationship. So maybe it's a little bit of a leap, but I think it sounds interesting.
That's interesting. I'm curious because, again, I think a lot of this 59 energy has a lot to do with our relationship. I mean, we talk about it with our relationships out in the world, but I think obviously everything starts first inside, right? So the dishonesty is the gene key, is the shadow, right? And the dishonesty is essentially, where are we being dishonest with ourselves, right? And so until we can be honest with ourselves and look inward, it's really hard to, even if we have this energy to break down barriers and to be intimate with others, how deep is that intimacy if you yourself aren't intimate with yourself first, right? If you don't know yourself, right? And so I'd be curious from a mistletoe perspective if there's any, you know, if that is the thing, if there's anything like that inward, or is it mostly external?
No, I mean, the first step is to feel safe, and feeling safe has to be feeling safe with yourself first. So absolutely, that's where it begins. And it is particularly useful, which is another reason I thought about it at this time, is in situations where it feels like a fire hose of uh, cues of unsafety are coming at us, to suddenly feel, to be able to connect with ourselves so that we can connect with others.
And, the funny thing that just is coming up, it's like, and there's the old tradition of kissing under the mistletoe.
Oh, there you go.
And I mean, so even if one's fearful and it's somebody you haven't really formed a relationship with, that was a place one could do it, so that the opportunity to be vulnerable and create some intimacy. But I was also thinking about um, intimacy. Intimacy's messy. It's like when we actually show ourselves and share ourselves with someone else, and um, it's like then we need just to let somebody see our real selves. And you think about all the times that people date and they hide who they are forever until they actually go and live together, and then they can't do that anymore. And oh well, there you are. But looking at this is from another mediator, is that he said that conflict is an opportunity for intimacy. Is that when we actually disagree with each other, we get to know each other better. And so to not be so fearful of there being a little like tension, because then we're actually getting at what our fears are. And the fears, I think it was in this particular gate where Richard Rudd was talking about, one of the reasons for his writing the book was to get people to look at the fears of that they carry with them, get more intimate with them. And as you do that, the fears start to dissipate. And so there's intimacy, like you said, Christine, with ourselves.
Yeah, I love that you said that, Lois, because the gate 59, it's the gate that finishes the channel is gate 6 in human design, and gate 6 is the gate of friction, right? And so there is very much in this energy, this is the channel of mating, but within this channel of the energetics is very much like you cannot, yes, you can be, you can break down barriers and you can get inside of somebody's aura and be in their presence and have some sort of relationship. but you don't have a deep relationship, right? Until you've gone through this process of friction. I always think about this channel like the pearl, right? Like there's this thing about, the sand creates this thing that's an annoyance, that it's hard, and then eventually in the end, you've got this beautiful pearl, right? Like that metaphor has been used in many ways, but I think about that a lot in this energy. Just recognizing that, yeah, things being easy. I mean, we all, again, we've been conditioned to believe that life should be convenient and simple and easy, and then that's the goal, right? That if when things are hard, that somehow that's a problem that we shouldn't have had to face, which is the exact opposite of what's really true, right? We're all here to experience life in its full capacity for joy and ease and strife and trauma, right? Like this is what it is to be incarnate. And we learn the most and we experience the most when we are actually in these frictional spaces, right? We all know this. Everything we've ever learned, we learned because something was hard, right? And we took a lesson away from that. Or not. And we get we get a chance to do it all over again, right? So I just think it's a really, like, again, this, end of August energy is going to be probably, it's going to have some of that. This energy comes along with it, and just recognizing it for what it is, right? Like, don't be so resistant to the friction. Don't be so resistant to the lesson. Be more open to what is being offered here.
This doesn't apply to these gates that we're talking about, but taking us back to gate 4 that we're in, I remember when we were recording last time, I was like, oh, this sounds like a joyride. I mean, youthful folly, sign me up. And as soon as it hit and this irritation came, I was like, this doesn't feel like fun. But it's rubbing me. And as I'm rubbed and I snipe at someone or myself, I can see like, oh, something's really, what's the story under the story, because there's more to it, and of course that's where growth occurs.
And I think that came up when we were talking about gate 4 before. It's like the aggravation in homeopathy, it's speaking to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that I've covered everything I have for 59. Did I miss anything? Any other things that no? Okay.
Well,
All right.
we came to that point again.
Yeah, I guess so.
All right. So thank you for being with us, and we hope we'll see you next time.